Claude Code or Codex? Which one is the best for coding? Well, in this video, I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to run both Claude and Codex on the exact same set of tasks and give you my verdict on which one is better. Now, by no means is this going to be scientific. I'm just going to give them a pretty complex app to build and see what result we get. And I'm going to be judging them on the following criteria. We're going to first of all look at the speed. How long does it actually take to run? We're going to look at the cost, so the number of tokens, the usage, or how quickly I run through my subscription. We're then going to be looking at the actual finished result. Is there bugs? Does it work? Does it adhere to the spec that we gave it? And then finally, we're going to be looking at the code quality. I'm actually going to get each model to review the other model's code, and then I'll manually review it myself as someone who is a software engineer to give you any insights I might have. Anyways, with that said, let's get into it. I think this is going to be fun to see the actual live comparison between these two tools, which are the most hyped AI coding tools out there. So let's have a look at what we'll be building. Now I'm going to attempt to build CollabMD, a real-time collaborative markdown editor, which is relatively complex and is going to test how well these perform under real coding situations. Now we're going to be looking at features like split pane markdown editor, real-time collaboration. So we're going to be connecting via WebSockets and having to resolve maybe multiple conflicts or changes on the same line, cursor presence and awareness, document management, autosave and persistence. And then if we get to it and it doesn't break before then, we might add some other features like a version history, export, all of that kind of stuff. Now to keep this fair, I've written down the core tech stack that I want both of these models to use. I've given a really quick architecture and kind of just an overview of some flows, and then a quick layout of the different UI components and kind of how I want it to look. I'm trying to keep it relatively open-ended, but I also want to make sure that they're going to use the same tech stack so we can evaluate them fairly. Now that's kind of the spec, and what I'll do is I'll pass this spec to each model before we start as context, and then I'm going to go through a series of prompts, which I have right here. So rather than just saying build the entire project at once, I'm going to go through 8 different phases. The first phase is going to be scaffolding the project, where we'll use this prompt that's already written. Next, we'll do the basic editor and the preview. Then we're going to add the real-time synchronization. Then we're going to do the cursor presence, and then we'll go through landing page, document CRUD. We're going to do connection status, error handling, reconnection, version history, and then export in dark mode. Again, if we get to that phase, I don't know how long this is going to take. Now I have all of these written out. What I'm going to do is open up Claude, open up Codex. Let me quickly go through a few of my settings. Then we're going to start running this, and let's see what we get. So I'm pretty close to a fresh install on both of these softwares here. At least I haven't used them very much on my computer. I have Codex where I don't have any sessions because I was running it on another computer. And I have Claude Code where I just had a few in the past few months, but I haven't even been on this machine in, again, like 2 or 3 months. Now I have both of them active in a directory, which we'll have a look at in a second. And I'm going to put both of them in kind of the bypass permission or full access mode, so I don't need to manually accept all of the changes. Now in terms of models, I'm using Opus 4.7. And I've just put it in the max mode, which is the highest mode it has. Then on the Codex side, I'm using GPT 5.5. As you can see here, I'm using it in extra high, and I am not enabling the 1.5x speed because I don't have the ability to do that with Opus 4.7. Now, I actually think Opus 4.6 is better, but we're just going to use what they're claiming is the best model. So I'm using Opus 4.7, 1 million context, GPT 5.5. The context is lower when it's used in Codex, but that's the best that they have. And then the highest reasoning available. I don't care how much this costs me or how long it's going to run. Now, quickly, if we have a look at my usage in Claude Code, you can see that I'm done 11% weekly, 5% 5 hours. So hopefully we can get through this. And then if we go and have a look at, I guess, the usage here for, Codex, you can see I'm at 100% that I have remaining and 99% for the weekly. So we can go back to those values and see how quickly we rip through the subscription in a second. Now, you might also be wondering, how am I actually going to evaluate these at the end? Well, I will do a code analysis. And one of the reasons I can do that is because I actually do know how to code and learned it for a long period of time. And with that in mind, if you want to learn how to code, then I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Boot.dev, which is one of the best learning platforms out there and my long-term partner. Now, one of the biggest problems that I see with people learning how to code is boredom. They watch tutorials, copy code, feel productive for a week, and then quit. Now, Boot.dev takes a completely different approach. It's very hands-on and honestly feels more like a game than just a course. Now, you're learning back-end development by actually building things, not just watching videos. You work through real challenges in Python, SQL, and Go, earn XP, level up, fight bosses, and progress through a full back-end curriculum. Now, it sounds gimmicky, but it actually works because you're doing the same kind of problem solving that you do on the job. Now, they also have an AI tutor called Boots, which doesn't just dump answers on you, it asks follow-up questions and helps you reason through problems when you get stuck, which is way closer to how you actually learn. Now, all of the content is free to read and watch, and if you want the interactive coding, progress tracking, and AI help, that's part of the paid plan. Now, if you want to check it out, go to Boot.dev and use my code TECHWITHTIM to get 25% off your first year. Big thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Okay, so I'm going to start by loading in the Markdown file. We're going to give it the first prompt. Let's start running it. So prompt 1 is in. Let's start running these approximately at the same time, and let's see what we get. Okay, so Claude Code just finished here. We're about the 6-minute mark. Said that it's working properly, had some issue that I need to fix. Looks like this one is almost done here for Codex, but it's still running. So once it's done, I'll be right back. Okay, so finally, Codex has finished here. Funny enough, it tore down the process that Claude Code was doing, so it was able to run on the same port because there was a conflict that it found. And in this case, it ran for 14 minutes. I don't think Claude says the exact amount of time it ran for. But anyways, it's about 6 minutes in my estimations. And so this one took 8 minutes longer to run. But if we quickly pop open the code, we'll see, let's quickly look at Claude. We can see we have clients, right? Let's zoom in a little bit here. We have our source, okay? We have our server, we have our source here. If we look again, we just have a few files. Okay, that's fine. And then if we look at Codex, you'll notice that if we look in the client and we look in the source, we have a lot more directories. The scaffolding is a little bit more complete. If we go to the server, you can see same thing. We have like a types file, dist, data, all of this stuff that we don't have in the Claude version. I know I'm going through this very quickly, but the point is that while Codex did take a lot longer to run, it just did a lot more. Now, if we open up the Codex app, this is what it looks like. And from Claude's side, even before Codex was running, I didn't see anything appearing at all in the browser when I asked it to run it. So just to be fair to Claude, can you run the application please so I can preview it? Let's see if it can do that, because again, it never gave me a preview. It didn't verify anything. It just said, hey, you can run the server. But with Codex, it actually opened up the browser. It went through, it verified that it was working. It created a new document. I was watching it do this in real time using the computer use task. And I gave Claude the same ability to be able to do that, but it just didn't do so. Okay, so it now ran it. However, it still didn't run it in like the preview tab that it did in Codex, but you can see this is what it looks like. Of course, I can't press the button yet, but at least it's kind of spun up. Okay, let's move on to the next task here. Same thing, I'm going to paste in the next prompt. What I'm going to be doing here is building kind of the split screen editor. So I'm saying left pane, right pane, add a top bar, all of this kind of stuff. Same thing, let's run them relatively at the same time, and let's see what the next progress is. All right, so now this time, both of them finished at the same time. The Codex application is running right now on 5174. The chat, or the Claude Code one, sorry, is not running for some reason. So same thing, let's quickly tell it, can you make sure this is running on port 5173 so I can access the user interface? And let's see if we can get that spun up. It seems to have some issues getting it working in deployment, but while it's doing that, let's have a look at ClabMD here. So there's a new document. If I click into it, we get some kind of infinite loop happening. So obviously that's a bug that we're gonna have to fix. If we go back, we can delete a document, we can make a new document, and then, okay, there we go. If it's in another one, we can say hello, and okay, yeah, so same thing, we get some bug. Now go back here, let's see, do we get it running? Nothing's listening. Okay, let's see if it runs. Okay, so Claude Code is now up and running. I'm here. However, the new document button doesn't seem to be working. So it said I can go to /doc/test, and there we go. So let's go maybe like hello world, and at least the editor is working this time. So, I mean, the button didn't work, but it looks like overall the features are better than we had in Codex, and it's not giving me this like weird, infinite loop bug. So anyways, let's continue now. I'm gonna tell both of these the issues that I just quickly found, and then give them the next prompt, and let's see what the next iteration looks like. All right, so I told them both the issues. The next thing that we're gonna do is add the real-time collaboration here so that both people can kind of be messaging or changing it at the same time. And let's go ahead and submit these, see what we get. All right, so interestingly, Codex wrapped up first this time around the 7-minute mark. Claude Code is still going, finding some problems here. Again, it's having a lot of trouble actually running the dev servers and getting the deployment up, as you saw, whereas Codex seems to not have any issues. So while that's running, let's have a look at Codex's finished version here, just refreshed. Let's see if we open it up. Let's open a new one because this one's destroyed from the last time, and let's do something. So I don't know. hello world. Let's try to do like some Python code or something. Python, and let's go def function. Okay, that seems to work. 1, 2, 3. Cool. All right, nice. So that looks like it's good. Now, if I open up another tab here, let's see if we can edit it in real time. And it looks like it's even maybe doing the cursor thing. So if I type here, we can see in the other one, it's like pretty much happening instantly. Actually, it's probably easier if I open these real time so we can see it. So if I go like hello world, looks like that's updating. Let's close that off. Let's see if I delete someone else's. And it looks like the real-time collab is working. It's actually already giving us the cursor identity thing, although that was weird that it says user 83 there. Yeah, not sure why we're getting that. But anyways, you guys get the idea. Looks like that is working. And the real-time stuff is functioning, which is pretty cool. Okay, now let's wait for Claude Code to finish and test its version. Okay, so Claude Code is done. We're just testing this out. We can see seems like it is working. It's giving us the cursor intent as well, and even the highlight, same thing, is functioning. The button was working, not when I pressed share, but when I pressed the new document, that seemed to work, although it doesn't seem to be saving the documents. Maybe I need to refresh, so that's maybe an interesting bug that we can have a look at. Anyways, point is, that's functioning. Now let's move on to our next prompt. Okay, so we're moving on. Next one I said is just add the cursor presence, even though it kind of already has that. This prompt is a little bit more specific, so we can actually see where each user is, how many users are connected, all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, I'm not testing this completely at scale, but that's going to run. Now, while it's doing that, let's quickly just dive into the code before we go too much further. So if we go in the Claude app, we have a look at client, we have SRC, we have some components, some pages. Just open these up, make sure we don't have any massive components here. Overall, looks fine. Looks like it's using, I believe, Tailwind here for all of the styling. Okay, we have this kind of new editor object. If we go pages, we have an editor that's created here. Again, not too big. It seems fine. If we go index.css, not really much going on there. Yeah, just have the Tailwind imports. Moving over, we have some scripts. I'm not sure what this is doing. Sync smoke.mjs. Okay, interesting. If we go to the server, we have the database that's just stored there, and then we have SRC, we have DB, we have index, and then we have this. Okay, so not too much code overall. I'd say that's pretty good. If we have a look at Codex, let me just close all this for now. Go clients. It looks a little bit more structured. So we have types, pages, lib, components. Things are a little bit more separated out in terms of the API calls. Now it's doing the presence awareness, obviously, so we're getting that as well. For the users, okay. Distribution, we have the assets, got that. Node modules. What else do we have? We have logs. Looks like it's actually storing the logs, which is useful. And then if we go to the server, we have our data, our dist, node modules, our source, we have our types, db, and then index.ts. Nothing's too big, nothing's crazy unstructured, so overall, looks pretty good. Let's see what this next prompt gives us. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes here. Claude Code wrapped up about 1 minute ago. Codex is still going here, and it's trying to now actually test everything. So that's one thing I noticed with Codex is that it spends a long time trying to verify its work and actually go through like the browser control steps, which obviously takes a little bit longer, whereas Claude Code kind of just like finishes it and it doesn't actually verify it. It's not going and doing all of the testing in the browser like Codex is, even though I'm not directly asking it. So that's kind of an interesting thing at this point. Anyways, let's wait for them to finish and we'll see where we're at. All right, and Codex just wrapped up here about 3-4 minutes later. And again, it was doing a lot of the verification and said that that worked. Now, if we quickly just open these up, I have a bunch of browser windows now I got to organize. So this is the Claude Code version on the right side. You can see that we have kind of like the user showing up, the different cursor icons. On the left side, we have the Codex version. Now, what's kind of interesting is the cursor only appears when it's actually active in the browser. So like when I'm moving between the browser windows, you can see the other cursor kind of disappears, which is cool to see. You can see everything showing up here, shows us the icons on the top, which I think looks a little bit better. And then it seems to be saving it, if I go back here, in the correct area. Okay, and overall you get the idea. It's working, it's functioning, and we are good to go. And now we're gonna move on to the last prompt. So I actually had a few other prompts, but I'm just gonna combine all of them together so we can kind of throw a larger task at these and see if it can complete just all of the other features that I wanted done for this app. So for the final prompt, I kind of just combined steps 5. So the landing page all the way to the polish, to the version history, to the export in dark mode. I just took all of them and combined them together. I passed it both to Claude and to Codex. Let's see what we get. Okay, so finally, both of these are done. Now, in the case of Codex, this took what is it, 26 minutes to run, which is a long time. And Claude Code took maybe 7 or 8 minutes. Now, the one thing that I did notice here is that Codex was doing a lot of testing. So it was actually trying to spin up the browser, go through it. It did mess something up. So I gave it one additional prompt, say, hey, you got to fix the styling. It like disconnected something. But it was spending a majority of the time actually trying to test all of the features that it wrote. Whereas what Claude Code did is just write all of the features and said, hey, I'm done. Go, check it out yourself. So if we look at the finished apps, to be honest, they're almost identical, and I didn't really notice any major like flaws in either of them. If we have a look, this one created a bunch of tests itself. You can see it has this like little green thing to show you where people are active in it. So we can see if we go back, like one person is here because it's open in this same window. If I open it again, you can see now it should update and show 2 in a second, but I guess maybe that's a bug. I don't know. It has like a dark and light mode. You have the ability to export it as like Markdown or as an HTML file. And what else do we have? We have the ability to share, where it just like copies the link and you can paste it in another browser. And then again, you can see all of the people that are in here, and it works, in real time in terms of all of the updates, as you can see. Now, in terms of this was the Claude Code one. In terms of the Codex one, same thing. We have the dark and the light mode. If I click into a document, we can see that I can swap that over, dark mode here. 1, 2, 3, we get our code block, pi, hello world, whatever. If I open the same one, so let's open that here, we should see now that this will get updated to 2 in a second. Let's refresh. Yeah, you can see 2. We have the cursors, the highlight, same thing, share, put it in another window. Now, if we go back here, we get 3, and you can see we have everything kind of showing up and appearing, and we can see all the active cursors and whatnot. Let's go back here, and you can see, it's kind of popping up. So overall, we got pretty much the exact same result at the end of this. I mean, a few very minor differences. So now it's really a matter of having a look at the code quality and seeing which one gave us a better outcome. So if we start with the Claude app here, like we showed before, if we look at the client, we have our SRC, we have components, lib, and then pages. We have a not found page, editor page. This looks a little bit messy to me at just first glance when I'm kind of reading through this. We have a lot of nesting going on, although that's just kind of JavaScript and TypeScript code for you. We have a bunch of inline comments, which I don't really love. We have direct calls to APIs, directly inside of use fetches. That's usually not a best practice. And you also typically want to have some kind of function for that, so that's not great. Again, just a lot of like very kind of complicated code at first glance. Obviously the styling, we can't really avoid that if we want to use Tailwind. This is a bit weird to see for exporting the HTML, but I guess that's just how it did it. We have a toast, we have a theme toggle. I'm not going to go through everything, but I'm just generally trying to get kind of a sense of what does the code kind of look like. At least it's pretty modular on the component level here. So we have a lot of different things for like, okay, we have the history panel, we have the markdown editor. Again, I don't love all of this stuff in the same file as the component, but it's not too bad. Split pane, yeah, same thing. We got a lot of kind of nesting going on here, but overall it's not too bad. So that's from the client side. Then let's have a look at the server, SRC, index. We have all our API routes just kind of dumped together, but it's only 200 lines, so it's not horrible. We have something for the YJS here. For the database, yeah, we're just creating everything in one file, and that's kind of all we have from the backend. There's not really too much more going on there. So overall code is not too bad, but I think definitely, would not be the most maintainable thing in the world long term. Now let's have a look at Codex. So we have our client code, types, pages, libs, components, kind of same thing as what we had before. Seems like, let's go through here, markdown editor is, okay, not too large. Looks like it's a little bit more modular in terms of we have some separate use effects. We're calling individual functions. I don't see anything that's too crazy with the nesting. It looks a little bit easier to read. If we go into the API, notice that we have all the API stuff in a separate file, which I usually like to see. And it's all typed correctly, it looks like. Same thing for the presence, that's handled in a separate file. Again, looks pretty clean. I'm just skimming through it to get a quick sense. Theme, that's in a separate file. I don't think we had that before. User types, we have a types file, which I don't believe we had before. App.tsx. Then am I missing anything? No, overall it seems like it did maybe a better job at simplifying the code, because it looks like we have just a lot less code on the client side than we did in our Claude application. Now we also put everything in a data folder. That's good. We had logs, which we didn't have in the other application. From the server side, we have our SRC, we have types, DB, okay. DB looks similar. Yeah, very similar to what we had before. A bit longer, but some more functions to kind of separate things out. We have a nice index file here. Again, just skimming through for the API. We have our types, and that's kind of it. I mean, this doesn't have a ton of code, to be honest, for this type of application. So overall, I would say both code bases are generally decent. They're definitely not the most modular or following all of the best practices. I'm sure if we went through it line by line, we could find a lot of mistakes or things that we just wouldn't want to include in a production code base. Overall, if I was going to pick a code base I would want to have, I would probably lean more towards the Codex application, just because it seems like the code is a little bit higher quality. It seems like it's separated out a little bit, and also seems like we have less code on the client side compared to the Claude app, but I haven't had enough time to really fully figure that out. Whereas with Claude, again, it seems fine, but it feels like it's a little bit more overly complicated in terms of what it's doing there. We have a lot of nesting. We have a lot of weird, hard to parse, kind of files and comments. And even if we look, at the client side here for, I don't know, something like this, we can see that we don't really have a ton of inline comments, whereas Claude tends to kind of dump a bunch of comments in the code, which I really don't like and is not a great practice, especially as the code base gets larger and larger. So now what I want to do is I want to take these code bases, I want to pass them to the opposite model. I'm going to get them just to roast the code just so I get a sense of what those models think, and then we're going to wrap it up with kind of our final evaluation. Okay, so I'm not using the most scientific prompt in the world here, but I just said, hey, review this code base, give me the overall quality, what can be improved, common mistakes, whatever. So for Codex, I'm giving it the Claude app, and for Claude, I'm giving it the Codex app, and let's see what it says. Okay, so Codex is just wrapping up here. It took about 7 minutes. In the case of Claude, this is maybe 2 minutes, and that's kind of a trend I'm noticing here, is that Claude seems to be kind of right to the point a lot faster, whereas Codex was actually running tests on the application. It was going in, testing it, seeing, does this actually work? What's going on? Let me create an artifact. Let me test the server, whereas Claude just read the code. So let's go to Codex first, reviewing Claude's code, and let's see what it says. Okay, so it says WebSocket writes can create documents outside of the REST lifecycle. Deleted documents can be restructured by open clients. No auth, that's fine. Both those have that. Persistence is synchronous and full document per update, okay. History restore can restore stale content. Generally says the code is fine. However, the main pattern to improve is the local fetch, like I was talking about, where it's calling from inside of the component. Tooling and repo hygiene, okay. Client build, and then recommended priority. Okay, not bad. And then with Claude, it gave me a whole host of issues of the Codex one. Not all of them are really that actionable. Fake save indicator, okay. Disk write on every keystroke. I believe this one has it as well. Auth, that's not an issue. I think that one's not an issue as well. Directory mismatch, that's a small one. Patch on every keystroke. Migration leaves orphan tables, okay. And then it gives me kind of a nice table here of what to look at and some recommendations. So I think at this point, I kind of have enough information to give my overall recommendation on which one you should use. Now, first things to note, Claude seems to be a little bit more direct, to the point, just does kind of exactly what you ask it. Codex, on the other hand, is a little bit more proactive. Now that means it does take a little bit longer, but it's kind of doing things that it knows it's going to need to do, but you haven't directly asked it for, like running the server, testing it, right? Fixing a bug, whatever. Now Claude is definitely significantly faster. Now some tasks we're getting similar, but in most situations, I would say Codex is 50 to 70% longer, takes longer than running the same task in Claude. So when it comes to building something from scratch, it's definitely going to be faster to do that in Claude, whereas with Codex, it seems like this is a little bit more set up for larger applications, things where there's a lot of testing, where it's writing smaller amounts of code, but it's a lot more complex because it's doing a lot of kind of deeper thinking and reasoning, at least from what I can gather here. Now, in terms of the overall code quality, it's very similar generally, I would say. I think with Codex, it's slightly better, but that's really just a preference. I didn't read every line, so it's tough to say. And then the last thing I want to look at here is the usage, right? So if we look at our usage here, you can see that I'm now up to 23% on my 5-hour usage here, which is quite high. And the context window is actually not that large, which is interesting. Whereas with, Codex here, it automatically compacted its context window probably 3 or 4 prompts ago because it hit its maximum. We can have a look at it here where it was at, 258,000 tokens. And then if we look at our usage, let's go to rate limits. We can see that in our 5-hour window, we're only down 5%. So I forget what the exact amounts were, but I believe that with Claude, we've used about 2 to 2.5 times more usage on our subscription than we did with Codex. So even though Codex ran longer and did more thinking, we got significantly more kind of tokens per the cost compared to Claude or these Anthropic models, and that's been pretty consistent with other experiments that I've done. Now, I don't know the exact number of tokens used for these. I wasn't using the API. I don't have the exact bill, but the point is, if we're going to use Anthropic, at least in my estimation here, it's going to be probably 3 to 4 times more expensive than using Codex for the same task. So overall, my kind of analysis here is that you should probably be using both of these. If you're spinning something up completely from scratch and you want it to be done super fast, probably we're going to go with Claude, right? If we're doing something where we're debugging, testing, we really want to verify something's working, we're working in a larger application, Codex seems to work better for that. And again, I've used these in other scenarios as well where I'm kind of pulling some of this analysis from. Both of them are ultimately very capable models. They perform very similarly, but just better in certain situations. And keep in mind that I had both of these in extra high mode using, the most intense reasoning you can. Whereas if I were to drop it into just high or medium, of course, both of them would be a lot faster. And even with Claude here, or with Codex, sorry, I keep mixing them up, I could switch on the fast mode and it would still be cheaper at the 1.5x rate compared to using Claude, and I would get a faster response, which would almost make up for that kind of speed discrepancy that we're seeing. So anyways, guys, with that said, that's going to wrap up this video. I know it's not the most scientific method in the world. I can do some stuff that's a little bit more scientific in the future if you guys want to see that, so let me know. But I wanted to just try these out, give you my honest experience, and show you what these things can do because everybody's been hyping both models. They're still limited in certain cases. It is amazing what they can do, but you got to know how to use them, obviously, how to prompt them, and which one to pick for which task, which was kind of the purpose of this video. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.